It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Hannah Libman. Your maiden name was Kirschbaum. We're here in your beautiful apartment in Jerusalem. And Hannah, you were born in Germany.
Yes.
So could you tell us a little bit about your family and your roots?
Well, my parents were living in Germany, and that's of course why I was born there. But my father comes from Poland, Leszczyńsk, and my mother Romania. And my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, moved to Germany quite a long time before I was born. And it's a very interesting story. My father met my mother because he left Poland to go to Germany and find his way. And I went to shul on Friday night and sat next to a gentleman that was very friendly, and the man said, well, where are you from? You knew. And my father said, yes, I'm here now, and where are you from? Okay. Told him the whole story about having left Poland because he was about to be conscripted in the Austrian army. They were on the border together there, and he wasn't having any part of that. So he went to Germany. Anyway, they were in shul, and my father said, well, what are you doing for, where are you going to be for Shabbat? And my dad said, I don't know. He said, well, come home with me. So that was fine. He came home. They opened up the door. My father saw my mother, and my mother saw my father, and it was love at first sight. And they were married shortly after that. And lived in Germany. I was born there. He had a little business, a merchant kind of business that he was taking care of. My grandfather had a very big department store on the main street in Duisburg. And he was a well-known merchant, and was very proud that when the customers came in, they tipped their hats to him. He was so well respected. But that really didn't make any difference when the trouble started, and he had to escape, run away, and my father decided that this is no place for us to live in Germany.
Which city were you born in?
Duisburg.
Duisburg. And what year?
1929. And we lived in Düsseldorf, my father and mother and I. Anyway, one day I came home from school, and the other kids had thrown stones at me and called me dirty names. You know, Jew, dirty Jew. And I told my parents, and my father heard that, and he pondered for 1 minute, and he said, we're out of here, we're going. So it was not very possible to get into the United States. You had to have a visa and money. Well, we didn't have either one. But my mother had a cousin who lived in the States, and she wrote to him and appealed to him to sponsor us so that we could get a visa to come to America, go to America. And he was wonderful. He did. And he promised that he would support us so that we wouldn't be on the dole. And that's how we got to Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay, can I just ask, what is your earliest memories of growing up in Germany? What is your earliest recollections?
Oh, I had wonderful times with my grandparents. I can remember visiting them, and they had a wonderful umbrella stand in the corridor. And my earliest memories, not too much. My mother took me to Poland when I was 2 to meet my grandparents, my paternal grandparents. And the only thing I can remember from that trip, of course I was very young, but it was a very strong memory that I was in a big double bed, and everything was fine, but I woke up in the morning and I was on the dirt floor. I'd fallen out of bed, and of course they lived in a shtetl, and there wasn't very much advancement there, and the floor was a dirt floor, and I can remember that. Wow. But that was the only time I met my paternal grandparents. When we left Germany, my parents wanted my grandmother and grandfather to join us. And my grandfather said, "Oh no, don't be silly. I don't know why you're leaving. I'm a respected member of this community. They're not going to bother me." The policeman tips his hat to me. And he said, I'm not going to go. It's ridiculous to give up all this wonderful life I have. Well, P.S., it didn't make any difference whether anybody tipped their hats to him. He was still in the throes of all of that and had to leave everything and try to survive. And he and my uncle, his son, my mother's brother, walked. Well, my uncle had been arrested at one point, and he jumped off the truck. He was lucky. He got off the truck and ran away. They didn't get him. Anyway, then my grandfather and my uncle and his wife walked from Germany to Portugal. And they did that at night. They hid in the daytime, and at night they walked. And they found some decent people that helped them and gave them food. They didn't have too much shelter. They were in the woods. And they arrived in Portugal, and all three of them had escaped the camps. In 1945, they were practically standing on the dock waiting to get on a boat to come, and they could not get a visa to come to America. So my mother said, well, this is not going to work. That's my father and my brother. And she went to see our governor, and he said, I will get you a hearing before the State Department. Governor Ribicoff, do you know that name? I'll get you a hearing before the State Department and see what you can do about convincing them to let your father come. And here's this little Jewish lady, came out with a suitcase to Washington, D.C., not very good English, and convinced them that, yes, these people have got to be, you have to let them in. And they did. In 1945, they came to America.
And you remember meeting them?
Oh, yes. It was my oppa.
It must have been a very emotional reunion.
It was, and that's why now I am able to speak Yiddish, because I refused to speak German. I didn't want to use that language at all, even to welcome my grandfather. And I learned Yiddish. And to this day, I love Yiddish. It's my favorite language.
And you've got a beautiful picture of your parents and you and your brother.
Yes, my mother and father, and my brother and I.
This was taken still when you were in Germany?
What's that? Yes, this was in Germany. A few weeks before we left, we took a picture. And we had a nice life there, but my father wasn't going to tolerate what he knew was happening.
How old were you in this picture?
6.
6. And your brother?
My brother was 3.
And your brother's name?
My brother's name, Jacob.
And Hannah, can I just ask, do you remember when the Nazis came to power?
Oh, yes.
In 1933?
Yes. I remember not so much the political aspect, but the physical, the fright of the physical, seeing all this military buildup in the city. And I can remember in my grandmother and grandfather's house, they had this big department store on the first floor, and upstairs is where they lived. And I can remember standing in the window upstairs, watching the Nazis march down the avenue. I don't know, I was a little girl, it felt like thousands of them. And it scared me. It was so frightening. Very frightening.
And did you go to a government kindergarten, or did you go to kindergarten?
School. Yeah, government.
And did you have German school friends?
I don't remember any of them. I was in the first grade in Germany, and I don't remember anything from school.
And did you ever walk in the street and see the Nazis or people in the Nazi party?
Well, don't forget, this was in 1936.
Yeah.
It was a little before the horror. And they weren't quite so visible. I can remember hearing on the radio all this, the terrible rules and orders and things, and I knew that there were shortages of everything. But I really didn't know that I was supposed to be frightened, except when the children ran after me and threw stones.
And how did they know you were Jewish?
I don't know.
And you remember
Their
that?
parents must have told them.
You remember that incident of them throwing stones at you?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember that incident of the
very
children?
much, yes. And obviously they got that from their homes. They wouldn't have known on their own because they were little kids too.
And in the apartment that you stayed in, was it in a Jewish area or was it with...
No, I think it was a German area. But I don't remember anything unpleasant with neighbors or anything. It seemed like it was okay.
And did you come from a traditional family?
Yes, yeah. They were quite frum. My grandmother used to knit little gloves for the doorknobs on Pesach because she couldn't kasher the hand of doorknobs. And I can remember sitting out on the porch with her on Shabbat, and she would be telling me stories, and there was a big bucket, and it had a paper thing on it, and I guess I didn't realize I shouldn't do it, but I tore the paper to look inside, and I got scolded. You cannot tear that paper, it's Shabbat. It was a pickle jar. So yes, they were traditional, they were lovely, and
Did your parents take you to the shul, to the synagogue?
No, I don't remember going to the synagogue.
And do you remember having Pesach or any of the holidays?
Oh yes, sure. With my grandparents, always Pesach, and all the holidays. And Shabbat, if we had come from Düsseldorf to Duisburg, then we would come for Shabbat. But I guess I blocked out a lot of that, the memory of Germany. I think I just took it out of my mind because it was so bad. After, when we got to the States, that's when I realized how bad it was there.
You could feel the tension.
Yes.
You could feel...
Oh yeah.
And did your parents speak about what was going on, or did they try to shield you that you...
No, they didn't speak about what was going on, but they had the radio on all the time, and I was listening. And the news was on, and the rules came. And there was a sense of something was wrong.
And do you remember seeing the swastika?
Oh yes, this parade was covered with swastikas, and in the buildings. But in 1936, it was a little bit before the big push. But my father was very wise, and he realized that that's no place to live, and we have to get out of there.
And when did you leave? Was it in
1936.
And do you remember leaving your home and
oh yes,
and the journey?
Oh yes, I remember leaving the home. I remember the boat. There was a Jewish dining room on the boat, a kosher dining room on the boat.
Do you remember the name of the boat? Or?
Yes, it was the Aquitania.
Gee. And where did it leave from?
It left from Northampton.
But from Germany?
From England. We had to get to England to get the boat.
Wow.
And I can remember the train ride going from Germany to, I guess we were going to Belgium. My father had put some money in a bank in Belgium. So we had to get that money out. And I remember making a stop in, I don't know where, but in Belgium, Antwerp probably. And my father said, do not speak, do not say a word, just sit there, don't speak. He didn't want to attract any attention because we were Jews and we were already on our way out, and they weren't so happy about that. in Germany. So he said, no, don't attract any attention, just be quiet. And we got out. And we took the boat to, not Northampton, Southampton. And went across the channel, and then we got our ship to the States from there.
And when you got to America, your family came to...
So, no, they didn't. We arrived on our own. From the Hayas picked us up. You know the Hebrew... Okay. They picked us up.
It's an aid organization that helped
the Hebrew
Jewish
Immigrant Aid Society. And they picked us up at the ship and took us to the railroad station right then and there and said, okay, get on, here's your train. And when the man says, Hartford, get off. Well, we weren't sure what Hartford was, or was we want to hear it right, but I was saying it over and over and over and over and over to myself. And yes, they were there waiting for us in Hartford, and they took care of us for several weeks. We lived with them until they found us an apartment, and then life was wonderful.
And going to school, you learned English quickly? You learned...
Well, quickly, I guess I did. So we came in April, we arrived, and we moved into a big apartment house, I think with 10 families. That was a large apartment house for Hartford, because it's kind of a rural place. It was then. And, there was a very nice friend that I made there. And she said, okay, listen, you have to learn English. And she would sit me on the stoop every day and teach me some words and teach me how to... And she must have been a year or two older than me, that's all. And her name was Gert Fleischman. And she helped me with the English. And then I went to school. And I had been to first grade in Germany, but somehow they got all mixed up and put me into the third grade in America, with a very limited knowledge of the language. But it worked out okay. They were very nice in the school. They sent me down to the first grade every day for English lessons. So I was really learning with the first graders, but the rest of the education was with the third graders. Why I got put there, I'll never know, but it was fine.
And you made friends quickly?
Oh yeah.
And did anybody ask you about your accent or where you came from? Or?
I didn't have an accent. I don't have an accent now, and I never had an accent. I was determined to be, if I'm going to live in America, I'm going to be American. And I learned the language the best I could. Yeah, I never had an accent. My mother had an accent. They went to night school to learn English. My mother and father, and they managed pretty well.
And Hannah, in the town that you lived, were there any other immigrants from Germany or any other?
Yes, there was one other family. They had a son. Their name was Stein. They had a son, and he was about my age. And I met him in the school. I don't think they belonged to the same synagogue, but it was fine without immigrant friends. I didn't mind, but I was accepted by the neighborhood kids.
And can I ask, during growing up in America, when you heard that the war was happening in Europe,
I was
did you know what was going on?
Constantly. I was devastated. I couldn't get it out of my mind. To this day, I dream about it. Just the other day, I woke up and I was in such despair, and I realized that I'd had a dream about what happened.
So during the war, one knew you could...
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It was terrible. It was very visible.
Did you get letters or any information about the remaining family in Poland or in Germany?
There were a few letters that went back and forth, and then they stopped. And then my father's parents started off for Russia, and they never got there. And 2 brothers and a couple of sisters were lost. But he had 2 nieces, his brother's daughters, that came to Israel in 1920. They went to Palestine to live here. And they worked very hard, and they had a farm, and they were raising chickens and whatnot, and they really helped develop the country, these 2 ladies. And they have children, and I'm still in touch with their with their children.
And the family that were lost, do you know what happened to them?
Not really. We didn't know what happened to some of them. I know my grandmother and grandfather got typhus on the trip, and they died. But that was a natural death. However, they wouldn't have died if they'd been able to stay home.
And when the war ended in 45, and the real news came out that so many, 6 million had been killed in the concentration camps, how did your family react, or what do you remember?
I remember the pain in my heart. I carry it with me every day. I have it all the time. And I was hoping that as I got older it would diminish, but that can't leave me. Because there but for the grace of God go I. What happened to those people could easily have happened to me if my father hadn't been so wise.
So if those children wouldn't have thrown the stones at you and you wouldn't have come home, maybe
yes, not maybe, for sure. For sure.
That in a way saved your life and the life of your family.
Yes, and that's why I'm so grateful for every little thing that happens to me, everything good. I've been blessed my whole life. The fact that we got out of Germany and that we were able to get into the States and that we had a good life there, and now I'm here. I've just been blessed. My daughter has been here for 50 years. She's got her 50-year Aliyah Kiddush coming up in a couple of weeks. And my son, who still lives, my daughter lives here, but my son still lives in New York, but he has been working for Shaare Zedek Hospital in the New York office for 32 years. So he's been devoted and dedicated too.
And Hannah, did you ever go back to Germany?
No, I will not go back.
You won't go back?
I can't go back. The ground is covered in blood. I can't go there. I don't want to hear the language. And I don't want to be in that country. And I told my children, please never go there because the air is contaminated. So I think I've developed some very strong feelings in my kids, which probably was not the nicest thing to do, but I wanted to be sure they knew.
Well.
And that's the chair. That chair is a very important chair. That actually is the head chair of my dining room furniture. That was my husband's chair from the big dining room set. And when it was time when I felt I needed to talk to them about what had happened and to teach them and to tell them, I would say, okay, I think it's time to sit in the chair. And they would sit in the chair and I would go into my spiel.
And when your son and daughter grew up, you told them from an early age what happened to you?
Oh, yes.
So it was,
yes.
They knew from an early age?
Yes, oh yes. I wanted them to know. I didn't want it to be casual. It was deep inside me. And the fact that I escaped was a miracle, but I felt like I was there.
And I'm just going to take a picture
of the
video.
Chair?
This is it's a new...
As a matter of fact, my daughter mentioned the chair the other day.
It's very significant.
Well, yes, it is. And I brought it here to Israel because I couldn't be without the chair. The rest of the beautiful furniture I left behind, I didn't care. But that chair was...
Did your brother also have the same feelings about...
I don't think so. I don't think so. My brother was more casual.
Hannah, your brother did go back to Germany.
He went back to Germany. Germany sent us we got a letter inviting us. He got one and I got one, inviting us to come to Germany as guests of the government with a first-class airplane ticket, a stipend of $10,000, a driver and a car, and I don't know, I can't remember what else. Well, I looked at that and I said, I can't go there. That's blood money. I don't want their money, and I don't want to go there. And if it had been $10 million, I would not have gone. But my brother went. He felt it was that he wanted to go. And I was glad that he went, because that was what he wanted to do, as long as I didn't have to go too.
And can I ask, your parents, did they speak German to each other?
No, they spoke Yiddish and English. The German was forgotten. There were no German conversations in the house.
And did they ever speak about their life in Germany, or?
No, because I remembered I was there during their life in Germany, and it was fine.
But they never had any regrets, or they never...
No, they were so happy to get out. They escaped before the onslaught. It was wonderful. They felt like they were blessed, and that blessed us, that we didn't have to go through that.
And that you survived.
And that we survived and had a good life. And that we could end up in Israel. I mean, come on. That's pretty amazing.
It's incredible. So Hannah, I want to ask you, what message do you impart to your children and grandchildren and to future generations? Because you really witnessed, that incident of throwing the stones at you. Did you understand why they were doing it to you? It must have been such a trauma.
I still don't know why. What did we do? What did I do to them? What did we do to them? I never could understand it, and I never will be able to understand it. To me, that's evil. Evil incarnate, and there's no justification for that, no matter where you look or how hard you look. So I can't say anything about that.
And what message do you impart to the future generations? Because your story is it's miraculous. It really is.
Yes, it is.
And your father, his insight, and so many people thought it was going to blow over, or it won't last long.
Everybody thought it was going to blow over. He took my uncle with him, and he practically dragged his brother, because he didn't want to go. He said, I'm fine, I'm happy, everything is good here. No, you must come. He was the younger brother. And they came with us on the ship too. He insisted, and he was the older brother, so the younger brother said okay. Yeah.
So,
and that one, he ended up in New York because he had to have a sponsor too. And the sponsor that he got lived in New York, a relative. So he went to New York and we went to Connecticut.
And you stayed in touch all the time?
Yes, very close. Oh yes, we were together very often.
So Hannah, if I can just sum up, you're very grateful for what happened.
I am. I'm just blessed. That's how I feel. That I'm here.
And did you always have emunah? You always had faith in Hashem? You always had emunah and faith in Hashem?
Sure.
Because it's a big deal as well to have gone through, and your parents, they also kept their faith?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. Oh yes. My father was a scholar, but he was a scholar on his own. He didn't have so much education, but he loved learning and the biblical life. And he spoke biblical Hebrew before there was a country in Israel. So I guess that kind of got all instilled in us.
And Hannah, you remember when the state was established in 48?
Oh my goodness.
With the United Nations
Oh
resolution?
my goodness, we were sitting by the radio, counting. Oh, and I get the shivers just thinking about it.
And
Yeah,
coming to Israel, was it always a dream of yours to come and live in Israel?
I don't know if it was a dream of mine in the early years. I was very happy in the States. I had a good life. I was well accepted. I had lots of Jewish friends and lots of non-Jewish friends. And we were all good friends. And, you know, I never worried that they didn't like me because I was Jewish. But I forgot what I was going to say.
Coming to Israel, eventually that you
no.
ended up making Aliyah?
No, I came to Israel, to be honest, not because I didn't love Israel all the time. I did. I loved Israel. I supported Israel. I did everything I could from the States. But when we got older, our contemporaries were dying off, and my husband was one of 6 children, and we were the last couple left. Everybody was gone. And we decided to live there. Now, without family is very hard. And we had a good family here in Israel. My daughter was here, and she had 3 sons. And then my brother's son also moved to Israel. He wasn't quite religious enough when living in the States, so they sent him to Israel to a yeshiva, and that was the end. He never came home, and he lives here now. He lives in Beitar, and he's Haredi, and they have 8 children, and wonderful family, wonderful family.
Hannah, I just want to thank you. If I can just thank you. I'm so grateful to you.
I don't know what I told you.
No, Hannah, it's been amazing. So I just want to really thank you, Hannah. This has been so special, and you know, it's miraculous what happened on so many different levels.
Yes.
That act of those children throwing those stones really saved you and your family. It was a blessing.
Yeah.
And that you had family.
My father read it.
But also that you had family in America that was prepared to sponsor.
Yeah.
Because there are many stories where people didn't sponsor or they couldn't sponsor.
Well, these were far removed cousins. I mean, we never knew about them or anything.
Wow.
And I never heard about them until we got here, until we got to the States.
And they were prepared to sponsor.
Perfectly prepared.
That's another miracle, because there are unfortunately many instances where people couldn't get sponsors and they couldn't leave.
Right.
So it's been the greatest honor and privilege, and you should just have all mazel and bracha and all of Hashem's blessings.
Thank you.
And I am so grateful to you from the bottom of my heart. I really am.
Well, thank you.
And it's been for me the greatest honor and privilege, really.
Okay, if you say so. Thank you for including me.
Hannah, thank you so
I
much.
never thought that I had enough of a story to...
Oh, Hannah, it's very special, and you should just have all of Hashem's blessings at Mayvesrim to 120 in good health.
Thank you. I've had them all already. I can't ask for any more.
So you should just have nachas from the children, grandchildren.
I have 24 great-grandchildren.
Canaan Hora. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Honey, this is a picture with you and your mom, Ida.
Yeah. Ida Kirschbaum.
And till what age did she live?
97.
And you were very
she
close
was
with her.
Very close, and she was very sharp, and she looked beautiful and was smart until the last day.
And you have another.
And this is a picture of my husband when we got off the plane. Here's this is the stairs off the airplane. Those are my feet. I thought he had fallen down and had a heart attack, and I was so terrified. He was grateful to be here. This is when we made Aliyah.
It's wonderful. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
And you did this collage of your mother.
Yes, yes. And that one in the corner is a collage of Pesach The rabbi in West Hartford asked me to put in a piece for a Holocaust commemorative Haggadah that he wrote. He was a survivor, and he wrote a Haggadah, and this is Pesach with the 6 million on the empty chair.
And you see the Magen David.
Yes, those are the pajamas that the people wore in the concentration camps.
And you did this. You're so talented.
Well, I spent my life.
You're gifted.
I spent my life with it.
And all these collages you've done.
Yes.
This is all your artwork.
Yes.
It's magnificent.
That's my backyard in West Hartford.
Well, thank you so very much. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.